Well, we are right at the top of the hour, so why don't we dive in? Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar on harnessing the power of CTV in your omnichannel program. I'm Kevin Burke, Director of Digital Marketing here at Data Axle, and we are excited to connect with you today on this topic. Just some quick housekeeping. Due to the number of people in attendance today, everyone is muted. However, we do encourage questions. You can submit those via the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. We'll save about 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the call to address those questions. And this webinar is being recorded and the link will be shared afterwards. So without further ado, our host for today's webinar is Kevin Lamangeli, Director of Creative and Strategy here at Data Axle, who has had the benefit and the honor, I'll say, of being on the forefront of this CTV movement with some of our forward looking clients. So Kevin, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you, Kevin. And before we get started, I just wanted to let everybody know why I'm specifically so excited about CTV as a channel. Like many of you, I grew up in a household that was surrounded by marketing and advertising. My parents read the newspaper, subscribed to magazines, listened to the radio, opened their mail, of course, and nothing really got to me like television. Television, I felt like, was personal to me. So while I was watching my Saturday morning cartoons or my afternoon cartoons or whatever cartoons I could get my hands on, seeing those toy commercials and hearing the jingles and seeing the breakfast cereal mascots were all things that were exciting and immersive, and there was sight and movement and sound, and it was a much more immersive experience than anything else that really came across my way growing up in being exposed to marketing and advertising. And as I entered the realm of design and marketing, TV became sort of out of reach. It was up on this pedestal, and it was sort of like it was out of reach, and you had to be the biggest brands with the biggest budgets and with the biggest agency to really get into television. So over the past 20 years or so, at least of my career, we've honed our skills in digital marketing, where we learned the value of targeting and of reporting and personalization and testing, all these things that have really matured over the years in digital. And now I feel that CTV has brought the television back to us in a way that we know how to execute. Now we can be on that most important screen in a young person's life or in the household and be able to do it with the targeting and the testing and everything else that we learned as marketers. So that's what has me really excited about CTV coming back into our lives, both as people and also as marketers. So quickly, why we're here today and some of the things that we'll go over. We'll hit a little bit of an introduction on CTV and a bit of where it's been and where it's going. We'll look at some of the tactics from audience targeting to creative, from sort of beginner up into advanced as we follow our crawl, walk, run structure to the conversation. And throughout, we'll look at how a few real-life brands are incorporating CTV into their marketing programs. So first, just to level set, what do we mean by CTV? There have been different terms over time, and OTT has sort of been floated in there as well. But really, when we're talking CTV, we're talking about any of the streaming content, that television-style content, movies and shows that's being streamed over apps onto your smart TVs, onto your mobile devices, through gaming consoles. There's all kinds of devices like Amazon Fire Sticks and Rokus and things that are able to take that streaming content and deliver it to your television screen. And the big one, is Netflix, but Netflix is not advertising or allowing us to advertise on their platform just yet. We might have follow-up discussions about some of the moves that they're making, but some of the big ones that we see, like Hulu and Peacock. There's also Plex, Tubi, many more. There's even some that are kind of like special interests. There's one called Crunchyroll that's specifically for anime fans, and another one called Shudder that's for fans of horror and thrillers. So a lot of streaming content out there, a lot of different apps and services at the moment, and it's only growing. CTV was already growing in 2019, going into 2020, going into the pandemic. And the pandemic, once people were locked inside, streaming Tiger King and everything else really sent it into overdrive. And a lot of people adopted streaming as their primary way of taking in that kind of entertainment. So a bit of why we should care. Well, one, it is booming. CTV is booming for marketers. And the projections and trajections are all showing that it's going to continue to grow. The ad spend for this year alone was already recalculated by Insider Intelligence. It was originally at about $17.4 billion, and they upped it here to over $19 billion. So a lot of momentum there and continual growth. But we don't just want to follow other marketers and do what other marketers are doing. While marketers are brilliant, we really want to follow the audience and go where the audience is going. And, none better than Coca-Cola to sort of express that to us. Coca-Cola has been advertising on television since the early 1950s. They're about 70 years on television content, and they've been part of American pop culture and always sort of had their pulse on what the American public wants and being part of that experience. So they say it nicely here from Chris Price, the head of digital global advertising or marketing at Coke, says the consumer is making the choice for us. And it's not just that they went to where the eyeballs are, they went to where the interest is. People are going to CTV because they can, they have more control, right? You can select what you want to watch and when you want to watch it. And there's a lot of customization. And Coca-Cola said, well, that's also us. That's our brand. We want to be part of that positivity, and all part of their decision to jump into CTV. But you don't have to be Coca-Cola or have a Coca-Cola size budget to get into CTV. If you are one of the lucky ones with a linear TV budget, we're seeing here that about 58% of those who do are using some of that budget to get them into CTV. Otherwise, we have sort of a long tail here. Social media and web display advertising at 41% and 34%, respectively. We'll talk throughout how social and display benefit from the integration of CTV. So it makes sense that some of those social media budgets and display budgets are being lended to bring CTV into the mix. Similarly, with the next two, out-of-home advertising and audio, both of those largely being awareness channels. CTV is also excellent, really excels at awareness. So it makes sense that if you have an awareness campaign and you're already funding, your budget's already within out-of-home and audio, that you're able to carve off a bit of that and bring you into CTV as well. So why CTV is a must-have addition to your Omnichannel program? We really see three main things here. First is the growing viewership. And we talked about that a moment ago. But this year, around 60% of American consumers are watching connected TV and streaming media on a regular basis. That's adding up to literally billions of hours of content per week. In 2020, it was estimated about 3 billion hours per week, and it's only gone up since then. Second, it has unique capabilities. So more sophisticated targeting and better measuring tools can be had within CTV, including online and offline measurements. And third, that it's immune to the deprecation of the third-party cookie. Now, we've been talking about the death of the third-party cookie for a few years now. We know it's a major concern with a lot of marketers. Well, good news is CTV is largely immune to the cookie issues. And that's because it thrives on first-party data and IP addresses to keep track of viewers while still respecting their privacy. So now we'll get into some of the tactics. Like we said, we're going to break this up into a crawl, walk, and run. Hopefully you'll see yourself in one of these three sort of paths here. So crawling is really for those who are just starting out and looking to get into CTV for the first time. Walk will be for those who have tried CTV Emit and maybe are looking to just get more advanced. And Run is for those who have been there, who've tried CTV, or it's maybe proven itself, and they're looking to make it a bigger part of their omni-channel program. So first things first, let's start by crawling. First thing we want to do when we're crawling is to set your campaign goals and KPIs. CTV can measure a lot of different things, your video completion rates, the households reached, the online conversions. There's a lot of different criteria, but since there's been so much movement in CTV, and since it's still relatively young, there's not a lot out there with baselines like, this is my industry, what's my baseline for that? So we really need to look at it as what are the important KPIs for you and your business and your marketing program. So three of the ones that we see, that you could really expect. One, like we mentioned, was raising brand awareness and thinking of CTV as an awareness channel, as having the ability to be a tide that raises all boats, or at least raise all of your boats. Second is to drive traffic to the website. So even just by running your CTV campaign, as long as you have your name of your product and your logo or name of your organization, all those things on it, you're going to get an increase in your web traffic. People organically are going to, via awareness, going to go and search. You'll get more organic traffic. You'll see spikes in some of your paid traffic. We've also seen, some CTV looking to drive direct, whether that's via their URL and vanity URLs, even putting QR codes on some of the spots. The other day I was watching Who Framed Roger Rabbit on, I believe it was on Tubi, and there was a Procter & Gamble commercial, I think it was for Cascade, that had a QR code posted on their CTV spot to click with your phone and get a free sample. So definitely opportunities there to get people directly over to your website after seeing the spot. And third is creating an omni-channel experience. Similar to awareness, CTV can impact the performance of some of your other channels and some of your other initiatives, especially display and social. We've done a lot of integration with display and social, and we always see a benefit there of that integration. So as we continue to crawl along, we need to say, okay, how do we target our audiences? Where do we start with audience targeting? And our recommendation here is a really solid one, which is really going with some of the off-the-shelf segments that are available. And we do have them here at Data Axle. These are ready-made audiences that you can purchase and immediately market to. So they're less expensive than some of the custom models, but also really high quality. Also, the way that you purchase and target for CTV using these off-the-shelf segments is really similar to programmatic. So it allows you to easily replicate your targeting across multiple channels. You'll need a few to start off. You don't want to start with just one, but you don't want too many, because if you go too broad, you have trouble really getting a read on your performance. So we recommend about 2 to 3 segments and running them for up to 3 months in order to get reliable results. And shown here on screen are some of our most popular segments that we have available at Data Axle, with consumer segments on the left and some of our business segments on the right. Now, as it comes to creative, which is where my heart is, creative should never be a barrier to getting into, well, anything, but especially CTV. So don't be intimidated by the creative saying you don't have an ad, you don't have the budget. If your team or your vendor can create a solid YouTube video or solid YouTube ad, so the site, the sound, and have it fairly polished, they can get you into CTV. Utilize the assets that you have. If you have a DirecTV commercial or a television commercial, consider just using that directly into CTV. Sometimes a small tweak is all is needed in order to get you in there. Otherwise, you're likely have assets from social or from some of your other materials from your website, B-roll from maybe some of your projects that a creative team can take and put together a new CTV spot for you. but do keep in mind that sound does matter. This is something that social teams often overlook because sound is often not a big part of things like Facebook, where it's been turned off by default, and we really rely on captions and overlays in order to communicate. Sound is very much a part of CTV, just as it is part of television. So consider the music and sound effects and voiceover. You have people who are there watching their show and listening to their show, and then when the commercials come on, they may not sit and be looking, but they'll still be there in the room. They're multitasking, or they're grabbing a snack and they're fishing a Cheeto out of the couch. You still want your sound to come across. You still want your message to be delivered to them, even when they're not looking at the screen. So make sure you're budgeting for the sound, and that includes voiceovers. You don't need a Morgan Freeman, but you do need a professional. We had one client who, at some point bought a microphone and thought that somebody in their office had a good enough voice to do it. But it's more than just having a microphone and somebody who's willing to speak into it. It's having somebody who knows the craft, knows how to kind of voice act to an extent, but also having the soundproofing and everything else that goes into making a really clear and compelling voice track. The other thing we don't recommend is AI voiceover. That is something that we have and that we use for pacing and for a placeholder. And we see people running it in some YouTube ads and social ads, but we don't recommend using Amazon Poly or whatever for doing your voiceover work. Go ahead and hire a professional. We've even considered like the accents for some of our nonprofit organizations that we work with, or where one of them was doing a response in Ukraine, and we were able to hire a voice talent in Ukraine. Somebody who was able to speak English, but was native in Ukraine and living there. And we were able to commission them in order for them to provide a really authentic voiceover for our piece. Now we're going to get to start walking. One of the major benefits of CTV, as opposed to some other channels, is that it allows for extremely precise targeting. And so we have a couple options here for creating our audience models. The first is a traditional custom audience. And this is where we're taking the criteria that we know about the prospects. We know the demographic information and psychographic and behavioral and all these things. We're sort of engineering the perfect audience, out of that criteria and creating a model out of it. The other is creating a lookalike model. So really taking your high value customers or donors and bringing them in and creating a model of lookalikes that's basically just like them. So both of them really excellent ways to get in here in the walk phase. And once you have your custom audience, easy enough then to upload it into the appropriate platform within CTV. And that allows us to go ahead and reach some of those high impact and high value audiences. When it comes to creative in the walk phase, we really always benefit as creatives from experimenting and getting our hands dirty. So look for your creative to do the same things that they've been doing for years in digital, to personalize and to experiment. CTV really adds the flexibility of the digital channels into TV advertising. So again, don't be intimidated. We're used to the TV commercials, the Super Bowl commercials, where they work all year to get the perfect spot and it's got one chance to shine, and all your eggs are in that basket. Think of CTV as being like a digital channel that allows you to test and experiment and personalize and do all the things that we've come to value in digital marketing. You can test different offers, different creative approaches. We have Data Axle. We've tested longer versus shorter ads, different calls to action, like donate today versus donate monthly. We've even done male versus female voiceovers just to sort of see what was most appropriate for our spot and what was going to give us the best lift. And now finally, we get to run. as we integrate CTV into our multi-channel campaigns. So this is really where CTV starts to shine as it becomes part of our omni-channel mix, and that includes direct mail and all the digital channels. And really our first running step here is going to be the data. And so what we'll do is we'll just quickly go through a case study that we have here for our friends over at Defenders of Wildlife. They're a wildlife-based nonprofit that we work with, and they wanted a CTV campaign to do a few things. They wanted to boost their retargeting campaigns, increase their site traffic, lift their brand awareness, but also reach a younger audience. So knowing that we have the sort of complex mix of things that we need to address and deliver, we really have to start with the audience and making sure that we get that audience targeting right because we've defined these goals up front. So using our donor database Apogee, we created a custom model that was really rich. It was a composition of both new and existing donors that were both younger than the Defenders direct mail audience, but also had a higher propensity to give online. We then targeted this audience in CTV and followed up with a variety of ads in social and a display that were not just short versions of the CTV ad, but helped to support it, helped to sort of round out the whole story there. We'll talk about that in a second. And the campaign generated some really excellent results. I had a 300% increase in click-through rate for the display advertising. I had a 60% improvement in response from the acquisition direct mail pieces, a 16% increase in average gift, all while delivering us new donors who are on an average 10 years younger than those who are already on file at Defenders of Wildlife. So really exciting, not only at the performance here, but also the fact that we're able to measure all these things. And that's due to us setting it up right from the beginning, having the right audience, having the right goals and KPIs, and also having the right creative in the mix. When we're creating a CTV campaign, we need to think of it holistically as a part of the omni-channel experience. So think of CTV as kind of the point of the spear that is introducing the message, and then the other channels will build on top of it. So Facebook ads with additional footage, display ads for retargeting, matching landing page to drive them all to. So like we talked before about like the QR codes and stuff, it's really important to think about where the person is going to end up when they see your CTV ad or when they see some of the other ads that are being marketed to them as part of that 360 omni-channel campaign. So whether that's just your homepage or a particular category page or something on the website or a custom landing page, make sure that it's all reflective of what has been said and shown in your CTV spot. A couple examples, like if your CTV spot talks about how retirees or seniors are staying healthy and being active, your CTV ad may have clips of seniors walking in the park or playing pickleball, or a grandma who surfs. And so then your Facebook ads or your social ads can build on that, instead of just making kind of like, okay, this is what we said in the CTV piece. Actually expand on it. Show us the surfing grandma. Tell us a little bit more about her. We just kind of flashed her up in the TV spot. Let's find a little bit more about her. That way we're expanding on the program. We're not just reminding people they saw the CTV ad, but we're rewarding them and paying them off by showing them more of what we've introduced in CTV. Similar like with what we talked about with Defenders of Wildlife. Let's say we had a CTV spot that was about endangered wolves. Then your Facebook ad could talk more specifically about the orphaned wolf pup that you rescued and rehabilitated, and make him sort of a personality, in your campaign as well. One other tip here is to make the most of your assets. What we mean by that is, while you're creating new assets, think omni-channel, think where else they can be used. And we talked a moment ago about the importance of sound in your CTV spot. Well, so if you're choosing your music and you're writing your script and you're recording your voiceover and selecting your voice, those are all things that not only can lend themselves to CTV, but also to recording a streaming audio spot, would get you into Spotify or one of the streaming audio channels. So thinking about the channel mix and kind of planning for that upfront can make sure that those assets go further. And then as we wrap up a campaign, of course, we want to get at at those metrics like we showed with Defenders of Wildlife. And part of the way we do that is by running a matchback analysis at the end of the campaign. So that's really where we're looking at the group that we serve the ads to and sort of everybody who has converted during the course of the campaign, and matching that up against a holdout group who did not see our CTV spot. And then we're able to look at that and calculate sort of how those who were served the CTV campaign actually performed versus those who don't, and allowing us to attribute the conversions in the different channels to the actual CTV campaign. So now we'll just go into a couple other examples just to kind of get the numbers up there and show the kind of impact that CTV has. These are from others within the industry. First, Subway, the famous sandwich shops. Similar to Coca-Cola, they saw the eyeballs and people moving, their audience moving over to CTV, and that piqued their interest. So their main goal was to increase foot traffic into their local stores. They also have a long history of advertising on television, especially in local markets. So allowing them to get into CTV and also targeting those markets, but targeting them maybe even more acutely, really paid off for them. So what they saw after running their CTV campaign was over a 19% lift in visits to their Subway locations, measured at over 4,000 of their locations. And that's thanks to over 38 million impressions within the CTV campaign. And finally, Saucony, the sports apparel and running shoe company, they did sort of something interesting with their audience definition, which was looking at their search, how they were searching. And for those who were searching for post-workout products or recovery products, they were able to make a profile out of those folks and create an audience out of them. And that led to a 128% increase in Google searches, over a 28% lift in Amazon searches. So that's inclusive of both Amazon.com and the Amazon app, and over 21% lift in Roku audience purchases. So those who have Rokus who were streaming the ads were able to see them and purchase. So directly attributed to the campaign. And they also attribute 6,000 sales of their shoes to the CTV campaign itself. So love that they were able to get that sort of traction. So that's our discussion today on CTV. I really do feel that it's a channel you cannot afford to ignore, whether you're looking to raise donations or just reach new audiences, get people to come into your store or shop online. We definitely feel it's a must-have tool in your arsenal. And happy to have more conversations if you're ready to get started in CTV or just want to talk deeper about what it means for you and what the potential is. Definitely contact us here at Data Axle.
Kevin, that was awesome. Thanks for taking us through that. I felt like you were talking directly to me as you were waxing poetic on the days of yesteryear. So that was awesome. Time for ready for some Q&A here. We got a bunch of questions here in the console.
Sure.
Again, if you missed the announcement at the top, at the Q&A at the bottom, you can go ahead and submit your questions. We'll get to as many as we can here. At which phase are most of your clients when they get to you? Crawl, walk, or run?
Lately, we've had a lot of crawls, which has been great because we really get to start from scratch. We have a few that came in as walks as well, but it's It's the crawls that are really interesting because we're able to prove something out of nothing, sort of break new ground for them. But even when you come in at a crawl or if you come in at a walk, it's sort of our process to get you up to a run.
Alrighty. Can you briefly talk through the consumer segment process, how that is selected, and specifically, does Data Axle have consumer segments related to nonprofits?
Well, so yes, definitely lots of segments, a lot of work that we do within nonprofits, but I will defer to following up with some of our data scientists and data teams who day in, day out work with those lists and those kinds of organizations who absolutely can answer those questions.
So you mentioned that Netflix, Kevin, they've discussed getting into the advertising game. How will their insertion, if and when that happens, how will that change the landscape of CTV?
Well, Netflix is still the biggest. They're still the biggest out there. They don't have paid advertising yet. They have been talking about it, and last I heard it was maybe a year to 2 years. There was also talks of maybe some merging or at least cooperation with Roku. But one, they have the reach, right? Because they have the biggest audience in streaming, but they also do an amazing job at knowing that audience and tailoring content to them and making recommendations. So if Netflix takes the sort of scale that they have and also applies their sort of nuanced understanding of their viewers and combines that with technology that allows them to actually serve the ads like what Roku has, I think that'll be a slam dunk. That'll be really big in the industry.
Cool. So doing something like this is probably what a lot of folks are feeling on the line, but doing something like this would be uncharted territory for us. Beyond the crawl strategies that you walked through, any top level advice for us? This seems pretty daunting.
No, other than if we had like here's the soundbite or here's the one thing you need to know, we would have shared it here. We would have it on our homepage. But we'd say, let us consult with you. We're happy to have the conversation, talk about the opportunities, look at the program you have today and discuss where CTV can fit.
Nice. Another, I guess Netflix is top of mind here. Beyond Netflix, is there another big shoe to drop within the CTV space?
Not that I have insight into, but where there's so many people as far as viewers, so many eyeballs, so much money, and some really big companies, everything, right? Netflix themselves is big, Amazon's in the mix, Apple's in the mix. There's just a lot of weight in there for there not to be something else big, and disruptive on the horizon. So let's say we expect the unexpected, and it's been evolving over the past few years and it'll continue to evolve, I'm sure.
Kevin, does Data Axle work directly with the streaming services themselves?
So as far as the having the media relationships and everything, I would defer to some of our media specialists in order to kind of tie together those relationships and make those handshakes happen. As far as who, like, we're on the line, are we talking to Hulu and everybody else? It's sort of a mix. So I would say the conversations with our media team would be most appropriate there.
Fair enough. Are there ways to utilize CTV for direct response versus just awareness?
So yeah, that's where, like we said, QR codes, if you have a custom URL where you're sending people directly to your landing page or conversion page. But Roku, I'm not sure if the other ones do, but I know at least Roku has a direct purchase interface within there. That's where we're able to cite it with Saucony, that people are able to purchase directly through the Roku device or the Roku account for some of the ads there.
Got it. What about recommended length of these spots? 30, 15, 60? Particularly for nonprofit, this question is particularly for nonprofit.
We've struggled more with the 60 than with 30s and 15. It seems like, and I don't mean struggle to create the pieces, I just mean as far as getting it served, getting the response. It seems that the sweet spot for nonprofit specifically is in the 30-second range. But we usually have a mix of 30 and 15-second spots as part of the mix for CTV.
A couple of questions, a lot of interest on what you talked about with Defenders of Wildlife. Can you maybe talk a little bit more or expand upon what we did with Defenders?
As far as, I mean, we do have a case study up on our website, I believe, right, Kev? Mm-hmm. That has, I think that has maybe a link to the actual spot itself and a full written case study on the Defenders project. So I would invite anybody to go in and check out the work we've done there.
Scanning through here, looks like we're getting to most of them here. A lot of repeats here. Again, Q&A, feel free to type them in. Anything just kind of maybe like a last takeaway? I know on the line we've got a wide range of companies being represented here: Crawl, Walk, and Run, different sizes of nonprofits and not. Is there a kind of an overarching thought or takeaway that you would leave with us?
No, I feel like I've hit on it a few times, which is don't be intimidated. Think of it as a digital channel. And think of it as, like I said early on, it's just so exciting to have that screen back within reach. And I almost see it as not just an opportunity, but almost an obligation for those of us in direct response marketing and fundraising to use this channel, because that is where eyeballs are. That is where we're seeing a lot of performance. And I think we're obligated to look at it seriously within our marketing mix.
Sure.
It's not just a shiny object.
Yeah, for sure. We'll give it another minute here. While we'll give another minute for folks, we have a little bit of time here. Give another minute for folks to type something. I will mention that at the conclusion of this webinar, you will see a survey pop up. We would love to grab a minute of your time. Let us know how we did. We'd love to continue the conversation with you. That would be wonderful. Let's see here. Let's see here. I think we've run through them, Kevin. So, okay. Kev, listen, thank you for your time. Any additional questions, we are certainly accessible. Thanks for everyone for joining. You will get a recording link to this webinar following this meeting here, and everyone enjoy the rest of your day.